Hi everyone, this is Dominik in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Hi, I'm Françoise Lamotte here in Switzerland. Our podcast, The Digital Edge, brings our perspectives on the digital revolution with a cutting edge angle. Today, we are discussing cloud computing and whether cloud is accelerating digital transformation. But let's start with the beginning. What is cloud? What is cloud computing, Dominic?
Ah, uh, I think there might be multiple definitions around there, right? Based on who's selling a product that's cloud-based. But I think a good explanation would be computing services that live in an environment that are not on the premises of a company.
And um, I mean, when we think cloud, where does this happen? You say it's not on the premises, but is it somewhere in the sky? I mean, how does it work in reality?
Yeah, good question. Again, the simple answer is at the data center of one of the cloud services provider. And think, again, don't want to miss anybody, but the big providers are Google, for example. There's Amazon with that has a lot of web services, Microsoft as well, and they make up for a lot of the computing power that's used in the world for hosting applications, databases, and so forth for themselves as well as third parties.
Yeah, and I think if I'm not mistaken, cloud computing for Amazon is like what, 40% or even more of their revenues. I mean, it's a big share of what they do.
Yeah, it's a huge chunk and a huge offering, and it is a fascinating story, right? If you look at where Amazon started back in the day, selling books, and through their growth and their own internal needs, they started building up this computing capability, and then started sharing it with the rest of the world effectively, right? That could leverage their know-how in hosting applications and data and much, much more.
So if I look at, pre-cloud, usually companies, they used to have their own servers. They were hosting all their applications and data on the server. And usually they had also a backup site or a disaster recovery site where they were duplicating more or less, the everything they had in their own premises. So what are the benefits of having things on the cloud for an organization?
Yeah, the key benefits are really for businesses to start focusing more on their core services, right? Just like you said, hey, if I have to set up my own application hosting, my own infrastructure, and my own backup and so forth, right? That's a lot of technical skills that are required to build an environment where that's all possible. And so you need basically a full organization that's capable to do all of this work. And now with these cloud services at the infrastructure level or applications, you can really just subscribe to these topics and minimize your footprint on personnel significantly, right? So the depth of expertise within the organization can shrink significantly. And so there's a huge cost factor, but also a confidence factor and reliability also by leveraging these expert services that are cloud-based by people that only do that thing.
Mhm. So now I understand, I think we understand what cloud means and why it's, overall cheaper for an organization to use that type of storage or, a facility. But how do you see cloud as a catalyst for digital transformation? Did that accelerate digital transformation? Or,
Yes,
it's always.
I think it's a huge enabler because it takes the technical complexities out of an organization's digital transformation almost. And I would even say it takes it a step further, right? Where let's say 20 years ago or 10 years ago, even, right, companies had to consider hosting their own applications in-house and build that all up, right? Again, lots of effort to not only build but also maintain. Whereas now you say, hey, I need the new server. You go to your console on your cloud service provider, and 10 seconds or 20 seconds later, you have a fully functional virtual machine that's ready to go without any infrastructure whatsoever.
Yeah, and I agree that, with the vast amount of data that is generated every day by organizations, if you have that facility available and it's a no-brainer, then obviously you can, work on the content and the data and not work on the infrastructure and what it takes to keep it running.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and you actually mentioned a good point about the data aspect, right? This is also something that's changed from back in the day where we had like these storage limitations on physical disks and had to upgrade and expand and so forth. That took a lot of time and effort. And now there are, for example, on the database level, services that scale infinitely, almost virtually with any amount of data without having to really worry about reconfiguring or redeploying or redesigning applications. So it's really an incredible growth path that the industry has been on to make that available to their customers.
So we discuss about cloud as an accelerator of digital transformation. What about innovation? Have we seen new models or new solutions that came because cloud was there?
That's a good question. I think if you look at the end user from what the cloud means, right? I would step it up then more towards the application level because that's where kind of the business meets the use case, the real world. And this is where the ultimate true value is. Where, again, say back in the day, you had to buy your software, install it, and test it, and release it, or configure it, what have you. And now with more subscription models where software is being offered as a turnkey. You basically go to a website like what we do today. You go somewhere, you subscribe for a monthly fee or an annual fee, what have you, and there's no configuration, right? So this is really, I think, the accelerator for most companies where when there are new capabilities around, you just go and subscribe for that with your email. You set up your company through secure authentication, for example, and the rest of it is basically comes pre-configured and ready to go. So the ability for a company to say, hey, there's a new opportunity with a new type of software that could help us, to just go and acquire that, it's a huge enabler.
Do you feel that cloud is for everyone, every type of organization, or if you are a small industrial manufacturing organization with 20 people, most of them being on the assembly line, and then you have basically just admin stuff to manage and supply, blah blah. Is it still for you, or you can very well be competitive with your own servers in the back room?
Yeah, and I think there's a little bit of a consideration still, right? I think we're heading into the trajectory where cloud services, or even at least hybrid clouds, are going to become the norm and continue to work towards the standard, if you will, right? Because we shifted the pendulum from the early days where it was, "Ooh, cloud is scary. I don't know if I can trust this stuff," to the point we're well past the point where even operational organizations, right, that have manufacturing say that, hey, what's the thing that I have to have absolutely on site still to minimize impact to my operations, and everything else that doesn't have a good justification needs to go into the cloud because of these benefits. So there's
So,
still there's
yeah.
still some considerations residually for now where that's a topic.
Yeah. So you mentioned that there were some fears and concerns about cloud. I mean, I remember in one organization, one was still a cost because there was a lot of like video and stuff that communication had to store, and for that it was decided to keep a local server.
Mhm.
But some other fears were related to security, to availability, to data protection. Some countries or some organizations don't want their data to go to the US. So what do you answer about these concerns?
Yeah, I think a good approach to start with as a determination, right? If you look at the technical aspect and say, hey, this stuff everything can go into the cloud. The other consideration is on the security and information protection standpoint, really, where you have to think about what am I okay with going into the cloud, depending on the confidentiality nature of what you're working with. But it's not like that you can't trust your service provider, right? What it comes down to is understanding the data that you have and how it's being handled by the service provider. And there are, of course, now you get into service level agreements that you have to carefully review about the guarantees that you get from the cloud provider, not just around availability, but also about how they're handling and protecting the data. That's where security experts come into play that are good to have to review these topics to ensure that there's a legal protection as well of content. And if you say, you know what, it's too much, we'll just keep that in-house on our own servers, segregated from everything else, maybe there's a choice to be made there as well.
The other day, I was discussing with a CEO of a small organization, and he was saying, when you put stuff on, Microsoft Cloud or any of the others or Google, whatever, you know that they access your data. I mean, there is like mistrust on I don't know, the reliability, or even, and I said, but there is a contract, there is SLA, they have to respect your confidentiality, but still there was a kind of level of doubt whether this is really enforced. I mean, have we seen any incident related to that? I mean, not about, security breach or hacking or whatever, but just the information being accessed by the providers.
I I can't say off the top of my head. I remember reading about situations where data was accessed in unauthorized ways. I think that does happen. If it becomes public, it's of course a huge PR nightmare, right? Because it destroys trust in the service provider and the data that you're entrust them with. But I think more often it's probably the security aspects, the loss of confidential information, right? I mean, I get a letter from a company that I had my data with that, oh, my information was accessed by a third party, and I can get protection for my credit information and so forth supplementally. But it does happen. And there's also the availability situation. I don't know, a big event last year in July when CrowdStrike had an outage or incurred an outage that affected Microsoft Windows
Yes,
systems
absolutely.
worldwide for quite a significant amount of time. So, this is, again, becomes part of the conversation that you mentioned on the manufacturing or the high availability side of things, to say, how do we keep this, keep our requirements without systems going down, right? Because for some companies, if you're down for a half a day or even hours, it can mean millions of dollars in lost revenues, right?
And
So,
for hospitals, or I mean, it's even more critical for some other organizations.
yeah, it
So
sure is.
I'm taking from our conversation that yes, cloud has definitely, changed the way we do business, accelerated digital transformation, and has many benefits, but it's not 100% bulletproof.
Not
Where,
yet.
maybe just as a conclusion, what's next in cloud computing? Where are we heading?
Yeah, I think the trend will still clearly continue on. I think we'll see more focus on reliability in cloud environments, right? Where there's a continued shift of even mission critical applications to be able to move into cloud environments. We'll see also more IoT deployments where data is being collected standalone on the edge of the computing environment. That data gets consolidated centrally. And I think that the footprint of cloud will just continue to grow significantly. Again, it's not perfect. It doesn't have all the answers, but again, the reliability and the trust in the capabilities will just continue to grow.
Super. Thank you, Dominik, for sharing your perspective on the cloud.
My
and look forward to speaking with you next time.
All right. Sounds good.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. See you next time.